Hi, welcome to Music for the Soul podcast, where we talk honestly about difficult things. This is a place where music, hope, and healing come together. I'm Becky Nordquist.
And I'm Steve Seiler. Today we have with us Daphne Greer. Daphne has a ministry, has a couple of names. The Sweeter Side of Grief is what it's called on Facebook and Instagram. And grievinggumdrops.com is her website. We're going to talk today about loss. And so if you have lost someone recently or you know someone who has, this might be a good conversation to share. Daphne, welcome.
Hey, good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Well, it is great to have you on the program today because loss is just a part of living here and such an important topic to talk about and process together and bring hope to. We all experience various levels of loss, and it's amazing to me how different stories, regardless of how you've experienced loss, another person's story can help you heal. So I wonder, we're just going to jump right in if that's okay.
Sure.
Daphne, would you be willing to share with us your personal story of loss?
Sure. Back to 2008, I was the mom to a 5-year-old daughter named Lydia and a 3-year-old son named Hunter. And I commuted to work every day about 30 miles one way. And I had been there for maybe about 10 years. And I worked as an adult parole and probation officer. And I commuted like no problem. I didn't mind the drive. And it was July 16th, 2008, summer morning. It was beautiful, sunny out. And I was rushing the kids to get ready because we were always late, always running behind. And I took them to a preschool up there next to my work. And so we scrambled to get them dressed, get their breakfast. And I'm like, all right, load up in the car. We got to go. We started off down the road, got to the end of our block at the stop sign. And my daughter, Lydia, goes, Mom, turn around. And I was like, no, I'm not turning around. We're going to be late. And she goes, I forgot to tell Dad that I loved him. And I was like, really, Lydia? Well, he knows you love him. I was just focused and in a hurry, but I was like, all right. So I turned around and her dad was just getting in the car, getting ready to leave to go to work as well. So she got out of the car, told him she loved him, gave him a big hug. And we all got back in the car and headed on our way. And about 10 minutes later, up the highway, we were in a car accident. It was a remote kind of farmland highway with a flatbed truck. And gosh, I don't tell this story very often. So when I do, it takes me back there when I don't go back there very often. But the impact was on my side of the car and she was sitting behind me. And when the car came to a stop, she was unconscious and my son was crying in the back seat. And I couldn't get out my door. Everything was caved in. So I got out and I got my son out of the back. He was crying and I held him and I walked over to my daughter and she was unconscious in the car. So after all that, it's kind of a blur. I don't remember all the details. But the gentleman in front of me in the pickup had called 911. And so I remember sitting in the ditch in the weeds with my son, just crying and praying like, God help us, praying for my daughter. I didn't know the extent of her injuries, but I knew I had to console him and take care of him at that moment until help arrived. But it was, very surreal, like it was a dream. And speaking of dreams, another interesting thing happened right before that. About 2 weeks earlier, I had a dream about the car accident. And it awoke me in the middle of the night. I had this really vivid dream that my kids and I were in an accident. And I woke up and I was like, oh, my goodness. And I went and I checked on both of them in the rooms and they were sleeping. And I was like, oh, thank goodness it was just a dream. And then, 2 weeks later, it came true. So for me, that was a very, sense of an awakening there. And this was in McMinnville, Oregon. And I was taken by ambulance to one hospital and they had flown my daughter up to Portland to the trauma hospital. And I guess she passed away, I think, right before they landed. She had head injuries. Yeah. And my son didn't have, he had a tiny little scratch on him, but nothing. So, and I had a couple little things on my head and pretty bad messed up arm, but I was okay. So I just remember those moments in the emergency room, and laying in there, not knowing what was happening, very scared. And I remember I kept asking about my daughter, tell me, is she okay? I need to know about my daughter. And they kept saying, oh, well, we'll check. And hours had went by, and my coworkers had ended up flooding the lobby. They were just waiting. I mean, there must have been 20, 30 people there waiting with me. And my close partner that I worked with every day, he sat in the room with me. So it was a very life-altering experience that you never forget. At the time, I was 31, young, and thought I had the whole world in front of me. I had never experienced any tragedy or loss, or anything. I think in a way I was probably kind of superficial living, just thinking, life is good and I'm great and I've got these great kids, I got a great job, never considering, a lot of the pain and suffering that a lot of people go through it because I had never experienced it. So it definitely was a pivotal moment. And those early weeks and days and years were barely survivable at times.
Yeah.
So coming home, I came home late in the evening that day, and I remember I was dressed in a sweatsuit of sorts because they had cut my clothes off me, lots of medication, and I just sat on the couch, I think, for a couple of weeks, not believing this was the reality, looking at the front door, waiting for her to walk through it, staring up at the stairs, thinking she'll come down the stairs any minute. So yeah, that was very, very difficult. But thankfully I had a lot of family and friends to support. However, none of them had ever experienced the loss of a child, except I had a best friend who lost an infant, but otherwise nobody really knew what to do, I think.
For sure.
Including myself. So, yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I understand what it takes to go backwards in time because you're right back in the moment.
Yes.
And so I don't take it lightly when people are willing to share a very intimate, painful place. So thank you. I know that we will have listeners that will have experienced similar things and they're sitting there going, the people around me, they've never walked through this.
Right.
And I know that your story and the rest of this conversation is going to be like a lifeline to them. So thank you so much. Yeah. I'm so grateful for you. And often out of our deepest pain comes our greatest ministry, and how God will use those broken places in our life where he's revealed himself to us to help other people. And I know you have a wonderful ministry, and I would just love to hear the process of how that ministry grew from this tragedy.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, so much has happened since then. And I can look back in hindsight and be like, wow, God was present every step of the way. It doesn't feel like it at the time.
Yeah.
He was. I spent many, many nights for me just crying in the dark in the back of my walk-in closet because I was so encompassed with guilt, and just had no hope whatsoever. And nobody could give me that hope. So it slowly began with me knowing deep down that I couldn't do this on my own. And usually, I've always been very strong, very independent, really never relied on anybody. So I knew this was just beyond what I could do. And I had started counseling. I called a counselor that was recommended to me and got in within 2 weeks. And that was amazing. I went counseling for 3 years every week, and then off and on for a couple of years after that. But what I needed was someone to tell me that it was going to be okay. And nobody would tell me that. And I was desperate to hear those words. And I remember walking into my counselor's office first time, and I was in the little waiting room, and I was so nervous, so scared. And I heard a voice and it said, "It's going to be okay."
Mm.
And it just overcame me. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, it'll be okay." And, it's a lot of self-talk. And my counselor was amazing. She was like a gift from God. And it just, we're friends to this day. And I'll never forget what she did for me. Helped pull me out of those dark places. And as time went on, I think within the first month, I was taken to a compassionate friends meeting, support group meeting for child loss. And I did not like that at all. My first meeting, and I just sat around this big table, with probably 20 other parents, and I felt so out of place. So like I didn't belong there. And all I did was put my head down and cry the whole time. And it was just surreal that I was even there. And listening to all these other parents' stories, some of them were early in their grief of child loss, and some, it was 5, 10, 15 years. And I was like, they're still here. They're
Mm.
still going to these meetings. Like, is it going to be better? Is it going to be
Mm.
any better? Like, it just felt so hopeless.
Mhm.
But I kept going back. At the time, my husband at the time kept dragging me back, and my counselor had encouraged me to keep going back. And I did. And slowly over time, I grew to find comfort around those people. It
Mm.
was, they knew, they knew what I was going through. And to this day, I mean, that has been a huge healing component of my grief
Mm.
journey, is being around others who've been there and who understand and making those connections. My counselor had encouraged me to journal and write letters to my daughter because I was so afraid of forgetting certain things, just the way she laughed, the silly things she did. When I had dreams about her, I'd write those dreams down. I just, in my mind, it goes 100 miles an hour. And I just had all these things overflowing me. And so I wrote them down and I started journaling. And then a few years later, I was like, I'm in this spot. And I started finally to see God was there. I was learning to, hey, it's okay if I smiled one day, when you catch yourself laughing for the
Right.
first time
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, I shouldn't do that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All those little tiny things. And slowly, there were more good days than bad days. It took a lot of time, but it was there. And writing was very helpful to me. And I guess my whole direction in life, I really had no desire to do my job anymore, my career. I was a different person, but I continued to work part time doing that. And then the rest of the time, I was being a mom to my son and doing a lot of writing. And I felt it very healing. And I wanted to bring that hope to other people and wanted to keep my daughter's spirit alive. She was
Mm.
such a little firecracker. And you just hang on to those little things. And then, it was constantly turning to God and, renewing my mind with
Yeah.
what was real, what was
Mm.
true. And I dove in all about heaven because I really needed to know where my daughter was,
Sure. Yeah.
and I think it questions your faith for a little bit. And,
Mhm.
that just rocked my world. And I was like, oh, I ordered every book I could find on heaven and child loss. And I, just went a little crazy, like overboard, but it was very helpful to me. And I lived for those things, those little glimmers of hope and
Yeah.
promises I clung to with all my might. And so I think it was 3 years after she had passed away, I had decided I wanted to do something to give back. And my friend and I co-founded a nonprofit called Lydia's Love. And we did birthday parties at homeless shelters in the cities and also just provided birthday boxes for children in need whose families couldn't afford it.
Mm.
And that was an amazing, we still do it, just not as frequently.
Mhm.
But that was a wonderful thing, that even other families and kids and other churches all, united. And it was like a good project that people could do together to help
Mhm.
other children. And one interesting thing about that was when I was starting this up, I was looking for a logo. And I looked online and I found two different graphic designers and just randomly. And I'm like, well, I don't know which one to pick. So I'm like, we'll just go with this one. So called, made an appointment, went down there, and this lady came out and she's like, oh, come back to my office. So I did. And she was like, no, tell me your story. So I told her a little bit about my story. And she got really quiet. And she just was like, it's my farm. And I said, what? What do you mean? And she goes, where you had your accident, it's my family farm. So it was on their property, that part of the highway. And I was
Wow.
like, instantly overcome with like chills. I'm like, how in the world could this be? Like,
Yeah.
it was just like a divine thing. And she was
Mhm.
amazing. Anyway, so that was another huge part. She was very
Mhm.
instrumental in helping get that started and
Mm.
going.
That's
So I knew that
amazing.
was, yeah, it was really cool. So we did that. And then I started blogging and contributing to different websites and writing articles and just really wanting to bring hope to other people that are going through
Mm.
this because
Yeah.
we need it. Everybody
Yeah.
needs.
Yes.
So no matter what you're going through, and there's always been someone that is also going through it, and there will be many, many behind us. So
Mm.
I'm a firm believer in helping pave that way for other people. Yeah.
Absolutely.
In 2019, I published my book, Barely Breathing 10 Secrets to Surviving the Loss of Your Child, which just kind of outlines helpful tools that really helped me. And it's got some little journal things, entries and stuff about my daughter, and kind of just a guide for people that are also on this path. So
Now you have some other children, don't you? Now you
I
got
do.
uh,
I do. My 3-year-old back in 2008 is now 19. He's playing college football, doing well.
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
saw a picture of you with
Yeah.
him. He's
Yeah.
he's monstrous.
He is a monster. He's like 6'4", 300 pounds. I'm like,
Oh
ugh.
my goodness.
And it's so funny because I still see him as that little 3-year-old boy,
Oh, right?
you
Totally
know?
get
They'll
that.
be like 50 and we'll still see them at like 3, 4 years
Yeah.
old.
Yes. I'm like, you're still my little boy. It's
I
so funny. Yeah.
know.
He's huge.
Yeah.
And then I have a son that's just about 15. And then I had another daughter who's 13. And then I have an 11-year-old son. So I've got 4 other ones here.
Uh, busy
Beautiful.
house.
Busy. Yes.
Yeah, for
Well, now
sure.
you referenced earlier, what you needed, and one of the things that I saw on your Facebook page that I thought was really interesting
Uh-huh.
was what grieving parents need, but don't
Yes.
always have the strength to say. And
Yes.
there's 21 of those,
Yeah.
but there's 4 of them I wanted to ask you about that I
Yeah.
thought
Absolutely.
really resonated with stories that I know.
Yeah.
The first one was, we need you to mention our child's name,
Yeah.
not just on their birthday, but at
Mhm.
other times too. I
Mhm.
think sometimes people are afraid that if they mention the name, it will take you back to some horrible memory, as
Right.
if you're not already back there all the time on your own,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Exactly. People are afraid, but it actually makes us smile and we're like, oh, thank you. Like, yeah.
Another one that I thought was interesting. We need you to know that every day is a challenge, no matter how much time has passed.
Mhm.
I had a therapist say to me one time that time is neutral and heals nothing
Uh-huh.
unless you do the work,
Yeah.
unless you work through the experience. And you referenced 3 years of counseling every
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
And, that's not time passing. That's you rolling up your sleeves and going, I'm going to
Yeah.
confront this and deal with it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Another one, we need you to know that all those things other kids their age are doing hurts us to see sometimes.
Yeah. That's a tough one. Yeah. I remember watching my daughter's friends, first grade, then it was middle school, and then it was graduation and all those milestones. And it's still there. I think
Mhm.
about it. It's hard to
Mhm.
see, you're happy for them, but then you think, oh,
Sure. The way I relate to that, my son has spina bifida, and
oh,
so my dreams of playing baseball with him and all that sort of stuff kind of went away
oh
once he was
yeah.
born. And then, you see other kids his age able to do. I still remember we were in the front yard one day playing touch football with some people in the neighborhood, and he said, "I'm a fast runner." It was just heartbreaking because when
Oh,
his arms would be going as fast as they could, but he wasn't really running.
no.
To see other kids
Yeah, sure.
really healthy, it's just tough. So I can
Tugs
only
at your
imagine.
heartstrings.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then this one, so important. We need you to check on us because we probably won't reach out to you.
Yeah, very true.
And that's that thing again of and I've felt this, I'll just admit it. And I'm in this kind of ministry, so I should know better. But still there's sometimes when I feel like, should I reach out? Maybe they're doing okay. Maybe I don't need to ask them today. Just
Yeah,
trust that prompting from the Lord that if they came to mind, you're probably supposed to reach out.
that's exactly right. Yeah. And I think we all do that. We think we should reach out and, oh, well, I will later, or, you second guess yourself.
There, like I said, there are 21 of those needs on your Facebook page. So folks, please check that out.
Yeah, I particularly liked the last one is we need you to know that there's no way you could possibly understand unless you have had a child die too. And you can remember, I bet looking back in life, you hear people, oh, I lost this person or that, and you're like, you feel bad.
You do.
But it's different when you've experienced the depth of that. And, in our own story, like I remember shopping for our son's casket and
No.
just sitting there going, this is so wrong. They shouldn't even have boxes this
Yeah,
size.
right.
And,
Yeah.
and it's something you never imagine in a million years you're going to have to do.
Yes.
And then here you are doing it, and your life is just taking a hairpin turn, right? And the grief that's involved, and how there's so much that goes on, as if the loss itself isn't bad enough
Right.
and hard enough. But then you've got the rest of the family. You have other kids, and you have a marriage, and
Yes.
we've often discussed how a lot of times people are easy to relate with the moms in a loss situation,
Mhm.
but they have a hard time. I feel like dads often get overlooked. And,
Yeah.
I noticed on your website, you have a page called Grieving Dads, We See You. And I
Yes.
why do you think people don't understand what dads go through?
Dads, I think, are, even themselves, they think I'm the strong one. I've got to hold it together. They try to be the fixers, but they can't fix this. So I think in their eyes that they want to be viewed as that pillar of strength, for everybody else. But meanwhile, inside, they're really hurting and struggling themselves. It's, I think, difficult for men because society doesn't really, it's not talked about a lot, I guess. Men's type of grief, but I've gotten to know many men along this child loss journey, and that fits the mold. That's how they were. But also a lot of them that have really opened up about their emotional side and how it affected them. And I think that women are more overly emotional. Obviously, we talk more, and men keep a lot of it inside and internalize a lot. So I wrote that Grieving Dads, We See You, I think around Father's Day a couple years ago, because I was really thinking, of a couple specific dads who I knew. And, the words just kind of came out like, you're not forgotten. We do see you. We know what you're going through. You're not alone. So they need to hear those words too.
Yes. You are not alone is a big saying with us here in
Yeah.
Music for the Soul.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And since this is music for the soul, one of the things that we know songs can do is sometimes name for people what they can't name for themselves. So when
Yeah.
you talk about dads not being able to put things into words or having feelings they're not expressing, sometimes a song can do that. You mentioned our song today, and I'd like to play just a little bit of that, and then we'll talk a little bit about music.
Okay.
Today I got up with the sunrise, heard a robin sing, watched the cloud go by. Today was a good day. Today I fixed something to eat before that first dark wave washed over me. Today was a good day. It may not seem like much, but for me, it was. There were moments of light, dared to think about life beyond this awful season. Could it be that these little victories mean my heart has started healing? It might be the pathway is for me to simply live
So, Daphne, what is it about that song today that you find helpful?
That song really resonated with me because it was a reminder that we can look beyond this circumstance, and open our eyes to the blessings of today and what we do have. And it really struck me, like, because that's so important in my grief journey and the grief journey of other people, that we have to look at the perspective, the big picture, what is really going on. Look at the blessings we do have. What do we have to be grateful for? There's so much, and there's always someone else that has it worse than we do. And God has given us every day is, a new day, and his promises are there. And I think we really, for me anyway, was very helpful to focus on that.
Yeah, you mentioned that one day finding yourself smiling or laughing and
Yeah.
feeling guilty,
Yes.
right? And that's
Yeah.
kind of, today it's saying today you might actually have something that you can laugh about, and it's okay.
Exactly. Yes. I try to do that. Like, it's like a gratitude thing, gratitude journals, and write down every day, 3 things that are going well or 3 things that are positive in your life, and to really try to highlight the positives. And that song really resonated with me.
Tell us about the way hymns have been important in your life.
So I remember even as a child going to church and with my parents, and listening to them sing the hymns, and then I was singing them, and I just grew up with them. And both my parents were great piano players, and they would play them all the time in our house growing up. And so I became familiar with a lot of them. And then when my daughter passed away, I found myself playing them. So I would play on the piano and play those hymns that got down deep into my heart. And they were very moving for me. Like, I could feel God's word and the words just sinking into me. And it really uplifted me, and it was powerful, and it was healing, and they just brought me joy. And one of my dad's favorite hymns was How Great Thou Art. And that was a very powerful one. I love playing that one on the piano. That's one of my favorites. So I think more so than anything, hymns were the most healing type of music for me.
Yes.
Throughout my grief. Yeah.
We recently had Johnny Eric Satata on, who wrote a book about how hymns can help us in our suffering.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah, so you're affirming that.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
That's beautiful. So
Yeah.
I gotta ask,
Yeah.
did Lydia have a favorite song?
She did. She was like a little bit about Lydia. She was this 5.5-year-old, spunky, sassy, strawberry blonde little thing that was like a firecracker.
I love it.
She was into singing and dancing and performing and just everything. And she was all about her. But she also had a real strong connection to God. She loved going to church and visiting with everybody at church. And she was like this, just a ray of sunshine, but she loved to sing with her pink microphone and put on performances for everybody.
Girl after my own heart,
Yes.
right there. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that
That's
about her. It was
awesome.
like so cute. But so I took her to a few Broadway plays, and she loved musicals, and that was her thing. And her favorite one was Annie, the musical Annie. And so we went to Portland and saw that. And her favorites was, The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow. And she would sit with our black lab and just pet him and just sing that song, The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow, and just sing, like her world was perfect and just so happy and content. And when we were on our way that day of the accident, I was like, Lydia, here's the hairbrush, brush your hair. We were in the car, and she's like, Mom, you only know I can brush my hair when I sing. And so she was singing that song and brushing her hair. And so that was her all-time favorite. So
And you even, right. And you even had a makeshift Sandy.
Yes, we did. Dog. Yes. And those words, I listen to that song today, and then of course it makes me smile, but it also brings a little bit of tears. But it's got the powerful words too, the sun will come out tomorrow. Just keep chugging along one day at a time.
Yes.
Yeah, the sun will come out. And I've often said, you got to remember, when the dark clouds are out, above those clouds, the sun is still shining. It's still there. You just can't see it right now.
Yeah.
And it's true scientifically, and it's true in life.
True.
I
Right?
remember the first time I came to Nashville, I was landing through a bank of clouds and it was sunny, came down through the clouds and the whole town was covered in snow. And I thought,
Oh,
okay, that's weird.
that's weird. Yeah. Oh,
A
that's
180-degree
interesting.
change in the weather. You mentioned your 2019 book
Yes.
earlier, but you have a new book you're working on, don't you?
Yeah, I do. This is the book I've been wanting to do for many, many years. And it just seemed like there was never the right time. And I finally was like, I'm just going to start it and we'll see what happens. And I've got a working title of Mending Hearts with Threads of Hope. And it's going to be a 52-week devotional for grieving moms written by grieving moms. So it's going to be like a compilation of short little articles or essays from, 50 different moms offering words of hope and encouragement and what helped them on their journeys. Yeah, because I think there's nothing more powerful than hearing stories from other people who've been there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the comfort, you're
Yeah.
comforting with the comfort that you've
Yeah.
received. And no, like we said earlier, nobody understands it like another person that has
Yeah.
walked that journey already. And I don't know about you, but seeing that person who has survived it, because you have those days where,
Mhm.
am I going to survive this? Like, can I
Right.
physically survive this? I am not sure.
Yeah.
And then you get a glimpse of somebody who's on the other shoreline. And they're
Yes.
like, here, I'm tossing you a life-saving ring here. And if nothing else, they're that vision of you can survive horrible things.
Yeah.
And you can actually stand up and walk and be productive and breathe again. And
Yeah.
while it's different, it's possible to walk through again.
Exactly. Very well said. Yes, exactly. It shows other people that you can survive it and it is possible. Yeah.
Well, that project sounds outstanding and amazing. And certainly our blessing and prayers will be with you as you journey through the process and get this out into the world, because it's definitely needed for
No,
sure.
thank you. Yes. I hope so.
So there's another thing that you've kind of gotten into here, and that's grief coaching. And could you tell us a little bit about that?
I don't do a whole lot, but I do some. Just connect with people and kind of like mentor them and help them find those lifelines, those, rays of sunshine, and offer that sense of hope and purpose. And I think I've learned through this and working with other people that a lot of people, they've lost their direction and their purpose in life. And I think it's so imperative that we help other people find that, because I believe God has a purpose for our lives and our pain. And people just, I think, need someone to walk them through and, brainstorm a new direction, a new purpose, and finding their way. So that is what I love to do. I love helping people find those glimmers of joy and hope and helping them, align them with a new direction, a new purpose, all while honoring those that have passed.
Well, I think it's appropriate to follow up with this then.
Yeah.
Is there any advice that you would like to leave people with who are grieving the loss of a child? Any encouragement that you'd like to say to them today?
You can't do this alone, and you don't have to do it alone. We are here with you. God is with you. And number one is find that faith. I know that people don't like to reach out, but faith is number one. I don't believe people can do this alone without God. And if they do, it's not in a healthy, good way. And it's harder, a lot harder. And we're not meant to do it alone. And I want other people to know that there is hope. You can survive this and you can live a joy-filled life and be happy again. And I think that's so important for people to hear, because I needed to hear that, 16 years ago, and nobody told me that. And that really was a dark cloud over me for many years. So I just want people to know, yeah, it's painful and it sucks and it's awful, but also in time, God will reveal the blessings and the path forward, and it will be okay.
It will
Thank
be
you so
okay.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. It'll be okay, and you'll get to the other side. Wow, thank you so much for being with us today. Really enjoyed the conversation and your heart. And thank you so much for sharing your journey with us and our listeners and giving such wonderful gifts to the world like your books.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Mm. If you enjoyed the discussion today, please share it with a friend and give us a positive review on iTunes.
And please visit our website, musicforthesoul.org, where you can stream or download every song in our catalog, including today, and read our lyrics, our healing music guide, our blog posts, and much more. Thank you so much for listening. God bless.
Yeah. Today I got up with the sunrise, heard a robin sing, watched the cloud go by. Today was a good day. Today I fixed something to eat before that first dark wave washed over me. Today was a good day. Yeah, it may not seem like much, but for me it was. There were moments of light, dared to think about life beyond this awful season. Could it be that these little victories mean my heart has started healing? It might be the pathway is for me to simply live today. Today I laughed with a good friend, was caught by surprise to feel joy again. Today was a good day. And it may not seem like much, but for me, it was. There were moments of light, dared to think about life beyond this awful season. Could it be that these little victories mean my heart has started healing? It might be the pathway is for me to simply live today. Look beyond myself, call a hurting friend, asked if I could help. There were moments of light, dared to think about life beyond this awful season. Could it be that these little victories mean my heart has started healing? There were moments of light, dared to think about life beyond this awful season. Could it be that these little victories mean my heart